It is a canon event. We are here talking about Across the Spider-Verse, the continuation of the story of Miles Morales. And ironically enough, this one starts off with Spider-Gwen telling the story, and they continue the ongoing joke of the let's go through this one more time bit. And she joined the band. She's very frustrated. And here's the twist: her father, much like Miles's dad, is a police officer, and there's a manhunt for Spider Gwen because in her universe she took out Peter Parker because he was the lizard guy. And then it's revealed throughout the course of this movie that Miles hasn't told his parents, and he struggles internally with the option of whether or not to tell them because they might understand or they might not. And Gwen spends the time arguing with her father, and she eventually gets caught, and he's like, I gotta do this by the book. And then he is caught up by this other Spider-Man who's from like 2099. He's the future Spider-Man, and he kind of saves Gwen with his partner. But this all comes about because of anomalies, one of which is being the vulture, but not any universal vulture, a paper vulture, a vulture made out of paper. So it's an actual bird. And there's a line in this where she's like, "You shouldn't play with fire because you're literally made of paper." And apparently, when they in the first one when they saved the multiverse, they left holes in the timeline so things would get through. So they're now a special task force of Spider-Men and women who track down these anomalies so they don't affect canon events. And then Spider-Gwen, after a few months of being on the team, even though she was told that she was a liability, she was doing very good. She goes to visit Miles because they're in separate dimensions. And apparently, when you're on this spider team, they give you a watch that allows you to travel dimensions. And if you're enjoying this content, please hit the like button so more people can see it. And yeah, so the story continues where she's hanging out with Miles, and he's got a tracking device on him, and she's hanging out with him, and she's got a separate mission because apparently, and this is revealed later in the movie, but he's the original anomaly. See, the spider that bit him in the first movie was from a separate universe that wasn't meant to bite him, it was meant to bite somebody else because these canon events link all the Spider-Men together, so they're all supposed to uh, have like their own version of Uncle Ben. Like Morales has Uncle Aaron, and Aunt May, who apparently moves to Florida. But, anyways, he's having an internal struggle again with his dad, who's about to become captain of the police force. And so they're at a party, and Miles is trying to be a sweet kid and get his parents a cake. And he's like, "Don't relax. I got cake, and it's got nice things written on it." And it turns out that he was messing around so much that it says "I'm not proud," and they ground him for months apparently. And he's just sitting in his room like, "I'm Spider-Man. I'm not grounded." And he's got his college roommate who he's still trying to get used to, or his boarding room roommate. And he's looking around his for his shoes, and he's like, "Are those my Jordans?" And he's like, "I can't help it. We're the same size." And he's like, "I'm not your guy in the chair. It starts with a phone call, and then blah blah blah." Yeah. So it's a great movie. It's a great sequel. And so Miles is going from universe to universe as they keep going in and out, and he meets different versions of people. but and sometimes they're in the same universe, other times they're not. Like I said, there's an artsy universe. They even spend some time. His arch nemesis in this movie is called the Spot, who's basically this white blob that has spots that he falls in and out of, and it's like an interdimensional portal. He eventually hits himself so hard that he gets knocked into himself. It's weird to explain, but then he goes through the portals, and he's like, I can go into any dimension I want. And there's a cool scene where they have him enter the Venom movie with the Clark lady who always like leaves Venom goodies and stuff. So that was funny. He's like, you act like weird stuff happens to you like this all the time. And she's like, it does. So, and then there's a whole nother situation where he's gaining that being the Spot. He said he wants to gain more power so that he can take on Miles Morales. But this Herrera, this futuristic Spider-Man, is actually trying to chase down Miles because he knows that he's the anomaly. And what Miles doesn't understand is everybody knew that Miles was the anomaly. Everybody from the first movie, from Spider Porker, Noir Spider Man, Peter Parker, Spider Gwen, the futuristic lady Spider Man. And eventually, what happens is he follows Gwen into a portal where he saves this family, and he's not supposed to because they're being dealt with as a canon event. And without that, he changes the whole timeline. And so he then gets his watch that he's coveted through this whole movie because he just wants to hang out with his friends. That's all Miles really wants. He wants to be accepted, and he felt like he wasn't getting it at home, so he thought he'd get it from his friends. But what he didn't realize is they were leading him through the agency, and he was like meeting all these things like a rhino, like a Mysterio, like a night prowler, and he's like, not your night prowler. Well, what they didn't tell him was they were basically bringing him there to bring him in, and they used Gwen because he's an anomaly, and they used the force field. But the entire time he's talking to Gwen, and he is like, I've been working on my game, working on my talent, working on my skills as Spider-Man. And so they put him in there because they actually realize that they have to tell him that his father's being dealt with in 2 days when he gets promoted to captain. And he doesn't like this. He wants to go home to protect his father, as any son would. And so he uses his electrical punch to knock out the force field. And again, if you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe to the channel. And then there's this big chase scene, and it's funny because Peter Parker actually has a daughter, and he's like, "Can I take a selfie with this? This is great. This is her first chase." And he gets to Miles by himself after Miles has outrun everybody. And Miles is kind of like, I'll do my own thing because he didn't want to be a part of the canon event. And it is a canon event. So he then talks to Peter, and Peter's like, good things happen, bad things happen. And what Peter didn't know was that they were all coming to get him. And they had this machine, which is like an algorithm that they use to track down anomalies that it takes Peter and it puts him back into the dimension, but puts him in the wrong dimension because the prowler that he dealt with is back, and his mom's there, and his dad is now gone. And so Miles is confused, and then he starts glitching because he's in the wrong dimension. And he glitches over and over again, and Spider Gwen goes to help him as she normally does after a bunch of soul searching. She's because she gets sent home by the Corps as well because she's deemed as a distraction, and they just send her home. So she goes to find Miles because she has a watch that Miles left in her room, and she goes back to the dimension that Miles is left in because it's the dimension without Spider-Man, which also has a Miles Morales, which became the Prowler, and so they go back to that dimension because that's where he's being held by his uncle and his alternate self, and you know Gwen figures that out because he is an anomaly, but then when he gets captured by his alternate self and his uncle, they kind of he's kind of in a precarious spot, in a tied up to a punching bag, really. And Gwen gathered up all the Spider-Men to go and get Miles because she knew exactly what happened. Because there's no Spider-Man in that universe because of the radioactive spider that bit Miles just left him there. And it ends with Spider Gwen showing up to save Miles with a to be continued screen. That's the end of the movie, and as always, until next time, may your ego come from a place that keeps you humble. I'm Mo Money. Mamba out.